There is a fable of a lion and a tiger who were out in the forest, and they both came upon at the same time a water hole, a puddle, and they both were very, very thirsty. And they knew that there wouldn't be enough for both of them. Being animals, they didn't know how to share, so they started fighting over the water hole, fighting over which one would win and be able to get the water and quench their thirst. They were kind of fierce with fury and with anger when suddenly they both realized above them were vultures flying around. And they kind of realized that if they continued their fight, that one of them would end up being the next meal for the vultures. So they looked at each other, and instead of being the next meal for the vultures, they decided to just make a slight bow and go off in peace. Instead of being devoured by the evil and by the vultures because of their own anger and their fury, it was much better to be able to part ways and to go on their way. Anger is a very terrible thing. Anger can consume people. It can lead to resentment if it is not resolved. It can be very long-standing, and it can be very devastating to relationships, whether it be to families, whether it be to communities, whether it be among coworkers as well, because it can consume. And it's a shame that we don't tend to let it go and let God be involved with it, as opposed to allowing it to fester and to stew. Our gospel reading today speaks of anger. It is anger that the people had at Jesus, because they could not believe that here he was, the carpenter's son, in front of them, telling them that the scripture would be fulfilled or is fulfilled in their hearing. It was the gospel from last weekend, which spoke about how there would be liberty to the captives, that there would be really a whole new, like a jubilee type of time of forgiveness, of freedom, and a wonderful new start was what was prophesied for years, and for Jesus to stand there in front of them, his own townspeople, and say, this is a new era, and please, I'm asking you to be with me. Instead of being proud, instead of, in a good way, instead of being able to say, wow, I like what he's saying. I see hope for the future in this man. And I really believe after what had been done in the Capernaum, and this was just the beginning of his public ministry, they really were not wanting to see beyond themselves. They really didn't want to hear that others would be able to receive the good news. Jesus brought up saying that it was more the widow who was accepting of it. God helped the widow. It was at the time of Elisha the prophet that the good news was beyond just a select group of people, but they had narrow-mindedness and intolerance, and that led to them being consumed, receiving really almost a hatred there for Christ. They did not want to see that good news would have come for all peoples, that the God that he was there to be able to be in their presence, being fulfilled in their presence, that this was a God for all peoples, not just for the Israelites, but rather the God of Abraham, the God of Jacob, the God of Moses, the God of Zarephath, for the people of Zarephath, the God of the people of Sidon. No, not just for the Israelites. The good news was much bigger. And so Jesus was able to escape from their intolerance and from their anger. But it was a shame because they really chose death. Those who did not accept Jesus decided instead to condemn him and were on a path and on a mission to destroy him, to destroy goodness, to destroy God, to destroy the beauty of life. Really, the second reading today speaks of the wonderful opposite of what anger is, and that is love. The community that Paul was writing to also had turned in on themselves, was very angry with one another. Paul wanted to give them that message of love. It's really rather ironic. This reading is proclaimed at, I would say, the majority of weddings. It's almost a relief, I will tell you as a priest, when I hear that the couple chose another reading, because I say, wow, there's creativity there, and they wanted to be different. because there's so many other beautiful, beautiful readings. But this speaks about all of what love is. And I think we realize that love is not a feeling. Love is a way of life. Anger is not a feeling. For many, it becomes also a way of life. If we encounter people who we know hold a great deal of anger within themselves, or fury, or resentment, we know they carry it with them wherever they go. We know when we meet somebody who is filled with great love, and what a difference it makes. Isn't it joyful to be around someone who is able to spread the good news of what Jesus came to be? He was love in the flesh, not anger, not fury, not those negative emotions. And so when we hear this gospel today, it's really a chance for us to think of our own emotions. When something doesn't go our way, when we don't have control over something, how do we react? As in this case, they did not have control over Jesus' words, and their reaction was to put him to death, to bring him to the brow of the hill. But he was clever and creative, and he got through their negativity. He escaped it. He went about his mission because the good news could not be stopped. God could not be stopped in this way by this group of people at this particular time. Rather, it was to be preached to all the people in that universal message. But for us, when we are consumed with an emotion that may not be the best, when we know it is not of God, how do we react to that? Are there situations maybe from our own past that we hold with us? Are there people or situations today, relationships maybe that we are not able to control? Do we allow it to consume us in terms of the fact if we're angry with one person, that deflects and we become angry at a lot of other people? And that's very, very sad when that happens, because then everyone is consumed by that wrath of what we have been consumed with. Rather, when we have those emotions of resentment or that negativity, it's that chance to be able to say, Lord, I need help with this. I assure you, God knows what to do with anger and with angry people. He knows how to pour his grace into situations which may seem impossible for us to deal with, or may be very, very challenging. But God knows what to do. And it's up to us to make those decisions, as Jesus did when he said, I'm not going to be consumed by their anger and get into their argument. Rather, he walked away. And Jesus found life. He found life through death, but he inevitably found life. And he wants to give that hope to each one of us. So today, as we approach the altar of the Lord to receive communion, it's a good chance for us to say, let go of whatever it is that is not of God, especially those emotions perhaps that keep us from God. If we are filled with anger, negativity, resentment, there's a lot less room there for the Almighty. If we are able to say, Lord, I need help with what I am dealing with today. Again, whether it be in our control or a lot of times out of our control, it's that chance to say, Lord, I need you. Lord, I need your grace. And Lord, give me the strength and the courage to be creative in how I deal with my challenges. Because maybe the best thing may be to part ways, and instead of being given over to death, rather be able to be filled with life.